unmute my mic. There we go. All right, lesson 10 today. Go and create an index file. Oops. All right, the CSS Box Model. We started talking about this a little bit last time, going into the hole with it now. Dun, dun, dun. So with the CSS Box Model, every element inside an HTML document is considered a box. Whether that's an image, a paragraph, a video, it doesn't matter, it's a box. And those boxes have different default properties that you can set, like the margin and the padding and the borders, right? That box idea and seeing how they work with each other. They're always present. We need to keep those things in mind as we're creating our content. So in the Chrome developer tools, if we select an element, I'm in Canvas here, so this is going to get weird. Here's a div. That's a standard one with lots of stuff on it. I like it because it has the box model right there at the bottom of the styles for the elements. We can see that this div has no margin, no border, no padding, and here's the size of the thing. In fact, the div is the entire screen of this thing. Dun, dun, dun. So just to review some stuff from last time a little bit, the margin is space outside of the element. It does not have color. It's always transparent, right? So if the element has a background color, the margin will take that color because the margin is transparent. If the object does not have a background color, then it's whatever the box is on top of, or just white. Then we have the border, right? It goes around the element, outlining the edges of any padding. The border can have several types of widths, different styles and colors. Then we have the padding that is around the content and inherits the background color of the content area. Then we have the actual content, which is our stuff, right? So stuff that's surrounded by padding that takes the color of the stuff. We have the border. Borders are separate than those, but they're on the inside. Then we have the margin, which is on the outside, that does not take the color of the stuff, right? We already messed with that a little bit last class. Let's see what I'm going to do with this one. We talked about total widths, right? So the margin, we have to, when we're talking about the width of something, we need to keep in mind the margin, the borders, and the padding, because all of those add into the size of the object. So we have to take the width plus 2 times the padding for the left and right, if they're the same. If they're different, then we need the left side plus the right side, plus the left border size plus the right border size, plus the left margin plus the right margin. The whole box every single time. Outlines. Nah, I won't cover that. All right, messing with the box model. Let's do that a little bit. All right, so I'm going to move this back over here. I think. Yeah, sure. Let's do this. Okay, so we're going to make a div here. It's not going to contain anything. We're just going to do an example. All right, so I'm setting this div to have a width of 50%, a height of 300 pixels. We'll do float left. Padding of a quarter rem. Start with that, leaving 0 just so it's easier to see. Okay. That up. Nope, 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 nope. Wrong button. Oh, gosh. Okay. What is this doing with this? So if I put some text in here, I'm trying to see what this example in the book is supposed to do. All right, so we got some text. We're going to pull up the box model for this element. All right, we have no margin, right? This space here is from the default margin on the body. Remember that body has an 8-pixel margin by default. We got a border of 1, padding of 4. That doesn't make sense. Why is the padding always 4? The padding shouldn't always be 4. By the way, this is how you test for mobile devices and various screen sizes. You, at least inside Chrome, you click on this button right here. It says Toggle Device Toolbar. This changes it to a size of what we want, and we can use some default sizes, like iPad Pro is this size, Pixel 2 is that size. I'm surprised they don't have it more common ones. Moto G. If you just do responsive, then you have this drag bar that you can change the size of the thing. Or you can rotate it, and then you can get some really crazy things going on with your things. All right. This was supposed to be, with the default box model, you can stretch out beyond the given amount of space completely without realizing it. Oh, okay, I see. No, I don't see. Nope. I don't see what this example was supposed to show, so I'm going to go ahead and move forward. Because this wasn't part of my thing. All right. Debugging the box model using browser developer tools. This is what I'm showing right here. This helps figure out things, right? So if you have, I'm going to go back to just responsive and turn this off. If you have a regular page, let's go to my web page just for kicks to pull up some stuff in there. And you select any element and say, like, this one isn't where I want it to be. I can click on it. Now it's going to pull up all the styles that are applied to it, including ones that it inherits and which ones aren't working. They get striked through if they're not working and things like that. There's lots of stuff on here. But then I get the box model, I can see what's going on. So for this element, that's the size of it, and it's got that 16 padding on the sides and 8 on the top. Its position, let's see, box sizing. Alright, if you place two div elements inside your HTML, you would expect them to line up side by side, as they should take up 50%, but that's not what they do, because as you learned in the previous section, the space of the elements take up includes the padding, border, and the margin. So if I just said the width of this thing is 50% and the width of that thing is 50%, they would not be right next to each other because that doesn't include the margin, the border, and the padding, right? But I do want them to be next to each other. That's where box sizing comes in. The box sizing takes two things. So you have a content box that can take width and height values, and they're assigned to the content box only, and the padding and border are added afterwards. That's the way that it's used by default. Then there's border box, and that flips the way it works. Any defined padding and border are included inside the assigned width and height values. Does that make sense what I'm saying there? So the default thing is that here's my width and height. The padding, border, and margin get added on top of that. If I change the box sizing, these are all just on inherit stuff here. If I change the box sizing from its default mode, which is content box, to border box, any value here will take away from the value in here. So the absolute size of my entire box will be my set width and height. We good on that? Right, so if I set the width to this to be 400 pixels and then gave it a 16 margin, it would still be 400 pixels total if I was using border box for box sizing. Let me show that. All right, so here we have a width of 50% and a height of 30%. I'm going to change the box sizing to be a border box. Save, refresh. All right. This is half of the size of the thing. Right, so if I put another thing in here, actually it'd be better. Oops. If I put two of these. Right? That's what we want. And that works because these are both 50%, but it only works because, let me throw this over here. Go to the side and close that. This works because we changed the box sizing to border box. So this additional padding was on the inside and will not exceed these values that we have set. If I change this, or if I just get rid of it and it goes back to the default value, so I'm going to get rid of this. Do I have to use HTML comments for CSS lines? I think so because it's an HTML document. Nope. Is it a hashtag? Nope. What is it? I think it's just / if it's inside the CSS to make it be ignored. Yep, there it is. That's how you do a CSS comment. So even though these are set to be 50%, the default style, which is called a content box, this is the size of the content. Anything added onto it adds to the size, right? So even though I said 50%, they're not fitting on the same line because they're actually bigger than 50%. By changing it from content box to border box, the width and height are the absolute power, and anything we add to that will take it from the inside instead of adding to the outside. We good? So if you know that you want something to be somewhere or some things to be lined up a certain way, you might want to change the box sizing just to make your head not explode. If you're adding margins and padding and stuff, you can see how this would be super helpful. I want the width to absolutely be 25%. Right? Okay. That will come in handy with today's assignment, by the way. Positioning. Dun, dun, dun. Right, that's the next thing I want to talk about. Yeah, positioning elements. Okay. There's this position property. The default is static. Static means not movable. It is placed as it appears in the normal flow of the HTML. So if this is static, this one appears first, this one appears second, this one appears on top, this one appears below. So if I get rid of this float and save it, that's how it is. Which we're very used to. That's the default way. There's a relative one. It is positioned relative to its current position in the document flow. So let's say I have some things floating, but I don't want this one to float with those, but I want it to kind of look where it's at. Remember when I floated some elements, but not all of them, that threw something up to the top of the page? That's where this relative thing comes in. We have absolute positioning, where you get to state exactly where you want it on the page. Then we have fixed. Fixed means it will always be there regardless of scrolling. Have you seen those kind of, probably ads, but things like that before? You scroll and it's always in the same position. That's a fixed position. It's always there. Really useful for like toolbars or footers, because where you want them to always be in a certain location, or a header. So let's mess with some things here. Let's do some inline style with this one. Do I have another example with this? I do. Okay, so when you're doing with positions, you first say what type of position you want, right? The relative, absolute, fixed, or the default, which is static. Then you can tell it the cardinal direction you want it to go for its offset. Left, right, top, or bottom. And then you can include values for those. So let me go ahead and let's make another, or should I just copy? Might be easier just to copy this from here. Yeah, I'm going to copy the previous content from the previous one, paste it in, and delete some stuff. All right, going to delete all that. We have 4 elements of various colors. That's all I mainly wanted. We're going to get rid of the paragraph. Actually get rid of all the paragraph elements. I still think this was faster than trying to write the whole thing up. Okay, we're going to get rid of those. Okay. All right, so we got 4 multicolored divs. Excellent. Let me add some CSS for the div, so that those are easier to work with. Let me do things correctly. you get a new keyboard. This wireless one, batteries are running out. All right. Boom, we got a box. Okay, so relative positions. They are vertical, one on top of another. Right? Do we need to close the door because they're loud out there, or are you guys okay? You're good? I'm just picking it up on the mic, but it's not bothering me. If you guys can hear, then you can hear. That's all I'm worried about. So if I put out this position relative, it's going to still look the same. Right? Because relative to their current position and how it appears in the normal flow is the same. Right? It appears in the normal form, it's relative to its current position. So taking this out as effectively changing it to static, but for the sake of this, they're both kind of the same way. All right, now we're going to mess with these a little bit now that we have them. Let's change the positions from relative to absolute. And if I hit refresh right now, I can only see one. Does that make sense why that happened? Yes? No? Instead of being relative to each other, where there's one after the other, absolute positioning means that they're all in the top right corner. They are now on top of each other, and the only one we can see is the last one because that's the one that's on top, right? So if we move things around a little bit, we can say left, 0, top, 0. And then this one we can say left 75, top, oh my gosh, I'm having a hard time with these colons, people. 25. Well, we're just gonna copy those since that's what we're typing. Change it from 75 to 150. And this one to 50. And then here we're going to change this to 25 and this one to 75. And now they'll be thrown out. I forgot to change this one. That's not supposed to be 50. Wait, 0, 25, 50. Okay. 75, 150, 225. What is happening? Oh, I forgot the P. Thank you. There we go. Now they're kind of flushed out. Right? Absolute positioning. I'm telling them where I want them to be. Right? So relative, they stack the way you expect them to. Absolute, be where I say. We can do fixed. Sure, let's throw a look at fixed real fast. Let's make the body be huge. This should give me a scroll bar. Yep. And I'm going to change this from absolute to fixed and refresh. So just like static and relative are similar, absolute and fixed are similar. With fixed, when I scroll, see the bar going up and down? They do not move. They are fixed in their position and will always be there on the screen. If I change this back to absolute, when I scroll down, they're not there. All right, we good? Relative and absolute are mainly the two that you need to know about that. Okay? All right, what's next? Controlling the way they stack up. Okay, Oh, yes. Well, sometimes for ease of programming, I might want to add something later in my web page, but I don't want it to be on top. Let's say I want div4 to be the third element, but I don't want to have to rearrange all my code because div4 was more of an afterthought. I can do that without having to move my HTML. It's called a z-index. So you can think of height and width, right, as the x and y axes. Z is coming out of the screen or going into the screen, right? So let's grab div2 and bring it to the front most and send div4 back one. Let's do that. So we'll say div4's z index is going to be -1, and div2's z index is going to be, technically I could just, well, I'm trying to remember now. Does it count? To +1. And then I hit refresh and we see that div2 is now the frontmost element and div4 is behind div3. In fact, it's the backmost element. It would be behind div1 as well. So the default z value for every element is 0. So by bringing something up 1, it's now going to be the frontmost thing and share the space with everything that's on the same z index level. Or sending something back 1. This is how we can affect the way things stack up with absolute and relative stuff because of these z indexes. Which is a useful thing because sometimes you want to do fancy stuff like that. What's next? Ooh, flow of text. That's a good one. Paragraphs are kind of boring. The text just goes a certain way, and if the paragraph element isn't big enough for the text, it gets bigger, I think. What's the default? Let's find out. Let's put a paragraph here, and we'll say, oh, we're going to put a lot of text into this paragraph. Dummy text generator, go. I don't really like this one, but it comes up first, so I don't care. We are going to go, we're only going to do one paragraph, but let's go like 500 words. All right, I'm going to copy that, and we are going to paste it here. And what is wrong? Why did you get upset with my /p all of a sudden? All right, because this is hard to follow, I'm going to do toggle soft wrap so I can see. 48 is huge. That looks like it should still work, right? Because I got the opening tag, and that is a closing tab. It's probably upset because this is a massively long single line of text, right? These dots mean that this is just a continuation of one line. So the highlighting is probably messed up. So let's come back here, refresh. Yep, there's all of our text. And here we can see our yellow element with a z-index of -1 is behind the text, right? Whereas div1 and div2, which are in z element 0, z index of 0, which is the same as the paragraph, are on top because they are on top in the HTML, right? Okay, so paragraphs by default will assume the size of the text that you send them, which in this case is massive, massive amounts of text. If I change that and say the height of the text is limited, doesn't work. These boxes are all 100 pixels high. I'm trying to set the height of my paragraph to 100 pixels. No good. It should only be as high as the red box. But it's not. It's overflown. Well, I want to control that. This way I can write my content and have different paragraphs, and I tell where the paragraphs are going to be, so I can have a continuous place where I write text, and then it shows up here, overflows to here, overflows to there. Let's see, what's the default one? The default one... So if I change, what is this called? It's called flow. The float controls how text flows around an element. If I say none, nope. If I say left, this is what the image is. Right. Okay. It's not going to deal very well because these positions are absolute. It doesn't have example code for me to grab. We don't want float. We already dealt with float. Clear. Where? Clear left? No. Alright, so I'm going to read the stuff since I'm starting here. Float property controls how text floats around an element. So if you have an image in there, we can have it to the left or to the right to go around the element. We have clear. So floating is kind of like text wrapping. It will wrap around an image, whereas clear makes it so that it's clear under or around the image. Default values. And then we have overflow. That's what I want. Overflow. The default value, I think, is inherit by default, which should pull auto, but I'm going to change it to hidden. So when I do this, any text that doesn't fit within the 100 pixels is going to be hidden, which means it gets cut off. And as you can see, it cuts through the letters themselves. Right? If I'm setting a thing with hidden, it's going to be that exact size, and it does not care if the words fit or not. All right? The next one is visible, which would do what you saw. It would just go out. We have scroll, which will add a scroll wheel, left and right. Let's go ahead and give this some positioning. So this is top. What's our topmost? 100 pixels should do it. Throw that. Oh, I have to say position absolute. Okay, now we can see the text. What? Oh, plus 100 for the size, so I should go 250 just to clear it well. There we go. All right, so scroll adds a scroll wheel. Right? Because it's overflowing in the height direction, I get a height one. If it was overflowing in the width, it would be there. I can also, as you probably already saw, say an overflow in a certain direction. Overflow in the X direction or the Y direction. So if I say if there's an overflow in the Y, let's give this a width. Oh my gosh. Width. And I'll say overflow in the X direction will be hidden. Right, so we have the y-axis has a scroll wheel. The x-axis does not. Right? I do suggest using both, especially with the scroll wheels, because it's kind of annoying to have the scroll wheel that doesn't do anything on the bottom. I think, at least. And then we increase the size of that just a bit to deal with it. What else we got? Oh, I was talking about something there, but it wasn't there yet. Never mind. So now I can control how the text shows up and things like that. I think that's actually it for the lesson, because it's more about controlling how things show and what you can do with them. All right, I'm going to close that. I'm going to close this. I'm probably going to close this one as well. Let's take a look at the assignment. Are any questions before I hop into the template for today's assignment? Nope. All right. All right, the second and third exercises from the web page. I'm going to change this from index to temp because I want your assignment to be called index, which makes sense. It just automatically loads up, so that makes life easy for me. New file, index.html. HTML, enter, save. All right, so we're calling it index. We're going to make a collage using a minimum of 5 different images that represent you. So feel free to scour the internet or use images that you already have to choose some that represent you. You're going to want to shrink those sizes. Remember web loadings and how big these computers are. They're not big. You're going to want to shrink the file sizes. Use GIMP to do that if it's a larger image. Minimum of 5 different ones. You're going to arrange them into a collage, and that follows a rough shape of something, like a square, a heart, a circle, a triangle, some shape. You're going to put these images into that shape using various sizes of the image, z-index values, and absolute positioning. You can reuse multiple images to make your shape work. I'm just requiring you to have at least 5 different ones. Make sense? Most likely you're going to need more than 5 total to make the image that you're trying to make. I don't think you need to look into the books thing because that's basically what it is. Using absolute positioning in your images make that work. So you're going to grab some images, throw them inside your lesson 10 folder, resize them before you send them up. Right? Should I cover how to resize things again real fast? Yes? Okay. Resizing. You pull up GIMP, and it loads on the screen that's not live, so we pull it over. You open your file. That's a big file, or whatever, and we go to, oh gosh, I know I have to remember stuff. Scale image. Open the file, image, scale image, and then you change the size. I would also change the resolution. That's one of the easiest ways to decrease the size of the image. If you don't know how big the image is going to be, which most likely you're not, doing it with the size itself here is difficult. Who remembers what the default resolution is for images on the internet? Nobody. Yep, 72. We're going to keep it linked. And you can see going from 300 pixels per square inch to only 72 pixels per square inch is a massive reduction in size, just right there. So I suggest doing at least that. If you know the size of the image is super big, like I know this one is a 2 monitor size image, you're probably going to want to mess with the sizes here. 100 by 38 pixels, that's a very small image. I do not suggest doing that. Right? But ideally, just to keep your repository small and your web pages loading fast, decrease the resolution to 72. And then you just set scale. Oh, and I did the 100 by 32. Yeah, that was a bad idea. Yeah. 72 pixels by square inch with only 100 things in it. It's really pixelated. Looks like Minecraft art. Okay. Because that's 800% blown up. Yeah, it's bad. It doesn't matter. All right. Any questions about the assignment? This should be a pretty easy one as well. Minimum of 5 different images. Arrange them in a shape on a web page. Okay, time's yours. For the rest of the class. Yeah, that's a good amount of time. Okay, I'm going to stop the stream.